Good afternoon, KCAA listeners, and good afternoon and good evening to those listening to us on the live stream link. This is the Kathleen Wells Show. I'm Kathleen, your host, and today I'm excited to have, let me tell you, this issue of racism/white supremacy I've been focusing on for a few weeks. Why? Why? Because the Zimmerman trial, that verdict, that murder of Trayvon Martin has sent many black people, many black folks in America into a tailspin, so to speak. It is so obvious. It is so obvious with that case. I mean, it was obvious before to many of us, to most of us, but it was so poignant, so obvious, so, what do I want to say? What is the word? I can't find it, but clear that was implicit racial bias in that case. And many of us don't know what that means, implicit racial bias. So, who do I have on today? Neely Fuller Jr., who has written the groundbreaking book, The United Independent Compensatory Code/System/Concept, which is a textbook/workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism/white supremacy. So, thank you, Mr. Fuller, for joining me this afternoon on the Kathleen Wells Show.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. Excuse me.
Well, you're very welcome. I received your book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. I received it on Monday. I wasn't able to complete. It's 2 volumes. I wasn't able to complete it, and I'll have you back on again when I completely read it. However, I want to ask you first to say or to give us a definition for racism/white supremacy. Give us a definition.
Well, the definition that I've been using for years, a compensatory definition, that's what I call it, a compensatory counter-racist definition. So I put it within that context so that people will know that that's not the ordinary dictionary context. I say white supremacy is racism, and racism is white supremacy. And what does racism and white supremacy mean? It just means people who are classified as white, who have classified themselves as white, have instituted a system called a system of white supremacy. Not all white people, but those white people who have chosen to do so. And that system is designed to practice racism, which is white supremacy, for the benefit of people classified as white and against people that they classify as non-white, black, brown, red, yellow, beige, tan, anybody who is on the planet who the white supremacists classify as non-white is in the non-white category because they do the classifying. They don't allow anybody else to do the classifying. Even if other people do the classifying, they look at it and they call it what they want to because, after all, they don't care what you classify yourself as being. They're going to function within the system that they have set up called white supremacy. And white supremacy just means, in simple terms, dominating and mistreating people based on color. People classified as white, mistreating people and dominating people based on the color classification, non-white, for the benefit of those who are in the color classification or the non-color classification, white. That's the royal category, the royal category based on color. You have all kinds of royalism, kings and queens and all like that. The system of white supremacy is a category based on color and non-color. And if you're in the color category, black, brown, red, yellow, beige, tan, etc., then you are eligible to be dominated and mistreated by people who classify themselves as the non-color white. And I kind of went in depth on that, but basically that's really what it's all about. It's just a form of mistreatment based on color. That's what white supremacy is.
It's a form of mistreatment based on color. And you say, and until we understand white supremacy, everything else that we do will simply confuse us.
That's what I have in my book, and that's what I've been saying all down through the decades and whatnot. If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Now, sometimes people say, well, you mean everything that I understand will confuse me if I don't understand racism? Yes, because racism is the dominant political and religious motivating force among the people of the planet in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. That covers just about everything that any person, minute by minute, might be doing or engaged in any time of day or night, anywhere on the planet. This thing called racism in the form of white supremacy is the dominant political. Political means has to do with anything that has to do with people interacting with each other. That's what politics is. People interaction. Now, anything that people do on the planet at any given moment of the day is directly or indirectly, if the people are non-white, the white supremacists are dominating whatever that activity is, either directly or indirectly, in any of those areas of activity. That's the assumption. Now, I'm making that assumption based on logic and based on evidence. Now, that could either be true or false. So I'm not supposed to make any false statements at all, period. Not even by slipping up. And if I slip up, I'm supposed to correct it immediately. Because the white supremacists deal in falsehood. They are the arch deceivers on the planet. They know how to make something look like it's something else. And they are masters at that. They are the greatest artists in the world. They are the most powerful people on the planet. And they are the most smartest. I didn't say good. I said smartest. Extremely cunning. Extremely clever. Can have people doing something against themselves, thinking that they're doing something to help themselves. They know how to do that almost at the snap of a finger, if those people are classified as non-white. They know how to do all sorts of things that people haven't even thought of. That's the non-white people of the planet. That's why I call it white supremacy.
Well, give us an example of that, doing something against one's own interest.
They can just put out an advertisement, which is easy to do. Just put an advertisement up on a billboard or put it on television, because they have already figured that their subjects don't really have minds of their own, because they have raised the non-white people, if you want to call it raising. They have certainly dominated. They haven't raised us. I mean, that's a term that we use, raising. But that means that even before non-white people are born in the latter days, that is, since the beginning of white supremacy, every non-white person who is born on the planet is born in the system of white supremacy. It's already a system in place. That's the only system in place. There is no other system of government in place on the planet. There are a lot of people that say that they have governments: the Nigerian government, the Congolese government, the Moroccan government, the government of Ghana, et cetera, et cetera. These are just words. There's only one government on the planet. That's the government of white supremacy. The white supremacists collectively, racist man and racist woman, white people who believe in white supremacy, are the only real government on the planet as we speak right now in 2013. that statement that I just made is either true or false. All other so-called governments are just names. They don't have any power. They have no say-so. They don't really exist, except in name only. I can go around and call myself the president of the world. The white supremacists allow me to do that. They don't care. But they know that anything that I want to do on this planet, I'd better come and ask them. Otherwise, I'm in trouble. And I will know that I'm in trouble because they'll see to it that I am. Any move that I make, I have to get their permission, including get on the radio this evening and talk like I'm talking. They can shut that down anytime they want to. Why? That's what white supremacy means. No non-white person is exempt from that. We're talking about what white supremacy means now. What is white supremacy? It's not some little operation over in a corner somewhere or something like some black people think. Racism is something you run into every now and then. You get up in the morning and you go to bed at night, eating, sleeping, and breathing racism, whether you know it or not. They have complete domination over every move that you make. If you eat some food on this planet, you better believe you had to come by them either directly or indirectly in order to do it. Otherwise, you'll starve to death. They have every inch of this planet under their control.
And that includes every country. And that includes, that's either true or false, and that includes every country in Africa.
Oh, it's no such thing as countries in Africa. That's why I said Congolese, Nigeria, Mali. These are just titles. These are just words on a piece of paper called maps. And the white supremacists even make those. They tell people where they're going to be. They assign people where they're going to be on the planet. They say, you're going to be here, you're going to be there, you're going to be over there, and whatnot. In other words, black people, non-white people on this planet, go where they are sent. The white supremacists go where they please.
This is interesting because how did we get to this position? I mean, it just didn't. What time frame are we talking about when it began, and how did it happen this way?
I'll answer the question. I don't know. Some people say 400 to 600 years ago. That's usually the time frame that most people give. When you talk about racism, they usually talk about 400 years to 600 years. Then some people say, oh, no, you're talking about something like 2,000 years. And then there are other people who say, oh, no, you're talking about at least a minimum of 6,000 years. Now, that's a long time for the same system of government to be in place. But some people claim it's actually, as far as black people on this planet are concerned, they have been under the thumb of the white supremacists, according to some people, for 6,000 years. That's a lot of practice that you can get in and being dominant. And you can just about cover up all your mistakes and just about have everything perfected in that length of time. In fact, you can do it even if it's just 600 years. That's a long time to be in business. Anybody who's been in any kind of business for 600 years has had a lot of practice in being in that business, particularly when they haven't had any competition. And the white supremacists, even at the most conservative figures, have been in business for a very long time. But now what I've written in my book, and this is why I started writing the book, I said, well, no matter how long something has been in business, and this is my theory, it can be taken apart in record time, meaning a new record. You might take 600 years to put something together, and you can take it apart in 15 minutes if you know how it's put together. That's essential. And whatever the theory is, the concept is, whatever people put together, people can take apart. Now, some years ago, I was talking to a gentleman, and he said, well, I'm going to tell you something. I appreciate your efforts in talking about getting rid of racism throughout this world. But the race problem cannot be solved. He said that's impossible. The race problem cannot be solved. It can only be discussed. I thought about that because I take people's remarks on race and on everything else, really, that's a serious subject. I take serious subjects seriously. So I thought about what the gentleman said. And I thought that maybe that could be true. I don't know what is true. I have to find out. I'm always learning. So he said the race problem cannot be solved. It can only be discussed. And I came to the conclusion after some thought, after some serious thought, that if the race problem cannot be solved, there's no point in discussing it. That would be insane. That would be a tremendous waste of time to try to solve a problem that cannot be solved. But then I came to a conclusion, and I still believe the conclusion that I came to. Anything that people put together, people can take apart. It's just a matter of knowing how it's put together.
Well, I mean, we're talking about some people. Some people say 6,000 years of this. Some say 500 years of this. So you're saying even if it's 6,000 years of this system, this political system, this system of supremacy, even if it's 6,000 years, even if it's 500 years, it can be taken apart in 5 minutes.
Sure, because the white supremacists put it together. They put it together. Nobody put it together but them, and they know how they did it.
So how is it taken apart?
It can be taken apart by understanding how it's put together. That's why I say if you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. Why? Because that's the dominant system on the planet. And anything that you touch, you're touching something that's associated with white supremacy. If you're looking for a job, if you're looking forward to going to college, if you're looking forward to going to the bottom of the ocean and doing some discoveries down there, you're going to be dealing with the white supremacists one way or another. One way or another on what they consider to be their ocean. And now, their stars, their heavens, their galaxies. And so the system, though, can be and should be replaced because it is an evil system. It's designed to mistreat people based on color. That's what it's designed to do. And it never should have been. And it stands in the way of what everybody on the planet should be, and that is what I call, and I mention it in my book, universal man, universal woman, which means people who are right in tune with the universe, people who can function in the most constructive manner anywhere that he or she happens to be in the known universe at any given time. Anywhere on the planet, you function with maximum constructive ability. We don't have anybody who can do that, including the white supremacists, because they're just stuck on being racist and having everybody else kowtow to it. And that has held up a constructive planet. We have a wonderful planet here that has been given to us by the creator of the planet, and presumably of all of the other so-called, quote-unquote, heavenly bodies out there, all of the millions and millions and billions of stars and galaxies and whatnot. Something put it there. You can call it God, Creator, Jehovah, the Great Spirit, and some people say the Big Bang. Well, even if it is the Big Bang created something pretty wonderful here. You can call it what you want to, but one thing, there's nobody breathing that I know of who can claim truthfully that they did it. See, now people can make a lot of claims about who did it, but nobody walking around on this planet that I've ever heard of say, hey, I did it all. I mean, all those stars up there, I did it. I did it last night, at 2 o'clock when nobody was looking. No, I've never heard of anybody, white or non-white, that made that claim. So therefore, there is something out there or something right here that has produced all of this. I've even heard some black people say, well, black people did it. Well, maybe they did. Or maybe white people did it. Or maybe no people did it, as we know people to be. But we do know that when we look at a cloud, at a bird, at a tree, or even look at our own fingernails, one thing we know for sure, if we'll tell the truth, we didn't do it. I look at my hand all the time, and that is a marvelous thing. Just your hand is right at the end of my arm. I can, on command, make my hand do lots of things. Pick up this, put this down, pick this up, and then turn that loose and reach over here and pick this. Now, I'm doing it. But do you know what? In all of these years, and I've been here with my own body for a long time, I don't know how I do it. I do not understand anything about how I do that. Now, somebody can describe it to me in words and all like that, but I still don't understand how I do it. And I've never met anybody who could explain it in a way that would make sense to me. Because in order for them to do that, they would have to know what the creator of a hand knows. And I don't know of anybody who knows that. I've heard of people, and seen so-called artificial hands. That's not creating. People do not create anything.
But
why?
wait,
you have to have something to create things out of.
Right.
So whatever the creator is first had to make a thing called nothing. Now, I don't know of anybody who has produced nothing. They can do nothing in nothing, in something that's nothing that's already here. But you have to have nothing in order to have something in the nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a creator.
Okay, you know what? I wanted to go back to this notion about how white supremacy has been around forever, at least 6,000 years, maybe 500 years, possibly, and it's controlled everything. But my understanding, in fact, this is a question from Marcus Washington. He's emailed me a question. He says, the Greeks and the Romans learned everything they know from the Egyptians. What's your response to that?
Could be. But it could be. But I'll respond because some people think that is really significant. And it may be significant. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's very significant. And I'll give my logical, compensatory, counter-racist, logical reason.
Uh-huh.
The white supremacists sometimes themselves say, you know what? A lot of black people were here before we got here. We came out of caves. We came out of caves and they don't use this expression, but they kind of imply like, it was 5 minutes ago. We just got here 5 minutes ago. You black people have been here on the planet for zillions of years. Mm-hmm. But, boy, look at us now. So what does that say about you? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And they got a point there. They got a point there. Mm-hmm. See, it's not how long you have been here. It's what you do while you've been here. That's what counts. Any teacher in any classroom will tell you that. That's pure mathematical logic. A teacher will walk into a classroom and say, Willie, how long have you been in this school, in the first grade? And Willie will say, I've been here in the first grade since I was 6 years old, and I'm 32 now. What does that say about Willie? And here comes little Johnny, and he spends 10 minutes in the first grade, and after 10 minutes, he's ready to graduate into postgraduate college. Why? Because that's what we're really saying. When black people started getting on that high horse and talking about how long they've been here, see, it's not how long you've been here. People can sit on a rock for millions of years. That doesn't count for anything. The earth is nothing but a big rock with some foliage on it. It's got
but
some
maybe it's about different values system. We're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, in fact, let me open up the phone lines. How do you feel about taking phone calls? Questions and
no problem.
You'd like to do that?
Counter-racist codification is about answering questions. Everything in the universe is about questions and answers.
Okay, so why don't we open up the phone?
That's the only way you can solve problems.
That's the only way you can solve problems is by answering questions. So we're going to open up the phone line. If there are any listeners out there that like to call in with questions or comments for Neely Fuller Jr., the number is 888-909-1050. That's 888-909-1050. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Kathleen Wells Show. I'm your host, Kathleen, and I'm speaking with Neely Fuller Jr., who has written the groundbreaking book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, which is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or actions for victims of racism/white supremacy. So, Mr. Fuller, I was asking you, what was I asking you? I was asking you, is it 6,000 years? Is it 500 years? What about this idea that the Romans and the Greeks learned everything they know from the Egyptians, many proclaim, and the reason why they have white supremacy has sort of, become supreme and ubiquitous is because the value system is different than the other system. Do you know what I mean? It's the reason why they've gained the superiority is because the system is interested in other things and achieving other things. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yes. Some white person took a look around at some point, presumably some white person, and say, you know what? I'm looking at all these people moving around here doing this and doing that. I'm going to come up with a system where I can dominate them, everybody that I classify as non-white, and have them jumping through hoops at my command. I'm going to come up with a system that does that. Apparently, somebody did that because the evidence is here. Somebody thought of a system called racism, and that somebody put it into operation, and it took off like a prairie fire. I mean, in record time, became the most powerful system of politics and religion. There's no religion stronger than the religion of white supremacy that the world has ever seen, and that's what we're experiencing right now. Now, how it all evolved and in the details, and the first person who got the idea is argumentative. But I don't argue about that. I just simply say, somebody did it, because that's what we're looking at. Somebody did it. Somebody set it up. Or we wouldn't be having this conversation here in 2013 right now about, we need this, we need that. Somebody ought to do something about this. Somebody ought to do something about that. President Obama ought to do this. Why doesn't somebody straighten out the Middle East? Why doesn't somebody do something about Trayvon Martin? And the people who are in position to do something about it at the push of a button would be the white supremacists. That's Big Daddy and Big Mama on this planet right now. Now,
well, a lot
how
of people
they got to
say
be that way? People have been arguing, and usually a lot of black people in barbershop arguments and whatnot argue about it ad infinitum. But even as they sit there in the barbershop, waiting to get their black braids to express their black manhood, they are doing it on the clock and on the turf, dominated by racist man and racist woman, as they argue among themselves like slaves at the bottom of the ship, arguing among themselves about who made what mistake when that got us in the shape that we're in. And that's a legitimate question.
Uh-huh.
How did all of this come about? From some people, that some black people who always have their fist in the air talking about black power, how did it come about that we got snookered?
It's not funny. It's not funny.
Yes, that's the thing to look at, though. See what I mean? All of this stuff about how great we are is not worth 2 cents when after we come down off of our pedestal with our kente cloth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we are standing in front of the delicatessen begging for quarters. See, what I have written deals with, see, I've said we have to, first of all, start with the truth about the condition that we are in and stop going around celebrating when the gas tank stays empty. In fact, I have said something that most black people have a serious problem with. Black people are not qualified to celebrate anything. And you can say that openly. All of the black people on this planet are not qualified to spend 5 minutes celebrating anything, not a birthday, you name it. Not qualified. We can do it, but we're not qualified to do it. Why? We're in awful shape. You celebrate after you have accomplished everything that needs to be accomplished. That should be the criteria, and not one split second before. That's the compensatory logic that I'm trying to get everybody to think in terms of. These are just some thoughts. Like I said, everything starts with a thought. The system of white supremacists started with a thought. And I say, not just based on Neely Fuller's emotions, but based on mathematics. We're not qualified to do any celebrating. We should be spending full time trying to figure out how to do 2 words, problem solve. And the biggest problem on this planet is the problem of white supremacy. Solve that problem. And once you solve that problem, since we're so far behind, I say we don't even celebrate then. We just breathe a sigh of relief and say, at last. Now let's move on to do what we should have been doing when the planet was first originated in the first place with people on it, like ourselves. Let's get on the track we should be on, because we're nowhere near it now.
And getting rid of racism plus white supremacy would be instituting justice. That's what you write.
That's the goal. Replace white supremacy with justice. See, what the law of compensation says, when you move something, you have to replace it with something of value, or you should replace it with something of value, not something that's just worth the same thing. You might as well just leave what you got in place. No, white supremacy gets in the way of a product, of the production of a product. What is that product? It's called justice. Otherwise, there would be no need to get rid of white supremacy. Just white people being in charge. Who cares about who's in charge as long as nobody's being mistreated? I know I don't. Just like when I get on a bus, I don't care who's driving the bus as long as the bus takes me where I want to go. So it's not a matter of who's in charge. It's not a matter of even who's smarter than whom. That's not the issue. It's a matter of whether or not people are being mistreated under the system that we have. That's the thing to center on. When you walk into a room, you just want to know, is anybody here being mistreated? Is this room about being mistreated? Are the people in the room dedicated to mistreatment? Or are you dedicated to helping the people that need help the most and guaranteeing that no one is mistreated in the process? Because that's what, from what I have written, justice would mean. Now, you might say, well, why would I take that definition? I made up that definition. The reason I made up the definition, because there is no legal definition for the word justice. A lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that until 1994. There is no legal definition for the word justice, yet the whole world is going around crying for it. But how can you cry for something when you don't have an idea of what it is?
Mm-hmm.
So I made up a definition that I think will work until someone comes up with a better one.
Mm-hmm.
And
give us that definition.
Well,
for justice.
Okay, two parts. The definition for justice, the compensatory definition for justice. Part one, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's part one. Part two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, what would that mean in a practical situation? Say that there are 10 people in a room. All of the 10 people on this planet, I would say in 2013, every last one of those 10 people, I don't care what 10 people it is, every last one of those 10 people needs some type of help. Even if it's just help finding the water fountain, all right, or finding the cafeteria. 10 people in a room. So, the question would be, okay, we got 10 people in the room. Everybody in this room needs help of some type. But there's somebody in this room who needs more help than everybody else. There's one person in this room that needs more help than anybody out of the 10 people. So it might turn out after everybody says the kind of help that they need, it might turn out that Mary Jackson, person number 6 out of the 10 people, needs the most help. Why? Her list is longer. See, it's very simple. The formula is very simple. Oh, say, well, after everybody turns in their list of the kind of help that they need, turns out that Mary Jackson, and we have verified it, she needs more help than everybody in this room. Her list is 3 times longer than everybody else's. So, very simple. Everybody, all the other 9 people, do what they can to help Mary Jackson as best they can.
But what about people being the devil's advocate? For instance, there's a young boy, I think he's 15 years old, who has an enlarged heart and he needs a heart transplant. The hospital denied him to get on the list to get a new heart transplant because they said he did not comply and
Hello?
He doesn't qualify to get the transplant. In other words, some people will say, well, Mary Jackson screwed up even though she has a long list. She doesn't qualify to get the most help. Do you see?
Oh, but see, that's the whole principle of justice. She does qualify because she needs the most help, and she's there to get help. See what I mean? I mean, she's there in the room to get help, and she's cooperating by making out her list, and the list turns out to be verified. In other words, she's not making it up. Now, if she's lying...
Yeah, but what if she contributed to her... In other words, what if she contributed to her list being long? In other words, her action...
She needs help getting her mind straight about contributing. See, that's what I mean. There's no way to get around this particular principle of justice.
Uh-huh.
In other words, Mary Jackson still needs help.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing you tell Mary Jackson, say, now, Mary Jackson, you said that you needed help. I'm giving this as an illustration. You needed help because you have a severe drug problem, and you needed help getting off of drugs. Now, we are willing to help you do that. And so, but you asked for money to pay your rent, okay? But it turned out that you're going to use the money to buy some more drugs. So that's not helping. See, that word help is very, it's very concise. Constructive help. See, that's another thing. That word constructive is in there. That's a real important word because everything in the universe is either constructive or non-constructive. And black people should be in the mode of becoming the most constructive people on the planet. That's the way our minds should be working by now.
Right.
We always think of doing the constructive thing.
Always. I agree with you.
Always. I mean, that's the way black people should be by 2013. By the end of this year, every black person on the planet should be in that mode of saying, hey, any move that I make from this moment on is going to be constructive. If I have a conversation with somebody, it's not going to be anything in that conversation that's not going to be constructive. Otherwise, I ain't talking. Now,
hey, where does President Obama...
That is a whole other world for black people because we are not used to doing anything constructive unless it's at gunpoint. Because the white supremacists have taught us to glorify being what? Non-constructive and or even worse, deliberately destructive. That's why even as we speak right now, there's some young black person most likely, and we're not picking on them just because they're young, because a whole lot of old black people are in prison and should be there too. And they were old when they got there, all right? Why? Because of the non-constructive mindset that they have. Like, first thing they want to do is use their time and energy standing around with a 9mm gun in their pocket, waiting on somebody weak to come by, to take advantage of, shoot them 5 times, and take that little $35 or $40 off of them and run down the street and consider themselves as being king of the world. Mm-hmm. Now, that type of thinking is very non-constructive, and we should not, in 2013, not a single black person on this planet should be known for doing anything similar to that. We should consider that, as they say in hip-hop, whack. I don't know whether they still use that term or not. I'm not up on all the terms. But in the old days, they had a word for it, I think, called whack, meaning something that you just don't do. It's stupid. It's something that's old-fashioned, outdated. Every black person on the planet should have that kind of mindset by now. So much so that the law enforcement people, when they roll up and they find a dead body and it looks like a robbery on the sidewalk and somebody's dead, somebody's been murdered for the little credit card that they had, all right, every white officer by now should be saying, well, there's one thing we're pretty sure of, nobody black did this. Because they don't do that kind of stuff anymore. They used to. They used to do tons of it. They used to glorify in it. They used to think that that's all they could do on the planet. But they don't do that anymore. They'll go to jail about a whole bunch of things, but not for murder, robbery, stealing, none of that nonsense. That's something they do not do. In
okay, Mr. Fuller, I have
in 2013, that should be just well known all over the world by now. That's where we should be, at least be that far ahead right now, right this minute. So it goes to show you how far behind we are.
Yeah, we're behind. We're behind, despite having a black president. Well, let me ask you this question on my Facebook page. Eric says it's not a race issue, it's a class issue, and it's the ideology of exclusion. And once we end the class, in this class history, we will see the ideology of exclusion in this class, race, gender exclusion is a source of parasitic wealth. And once you break the connection between the two, we will see the end of class history. So he's saying it's about class, not race.
Yeah.
What is your...
And the biggest class, the most poisonous class, is the white supremacists. It is a class issue. They are in the powerful class. There's only 2 classes of people on the planet. Powerful and powerless. I have that in the book. And the most powerful people on this planet is racist man and racist woman, 24/7 in all 9 areas of activity. They're powerful in economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. They dominate all of these activities that have to do directly or indirectly with the activities of the non-white people of the planet. So they are the powerful class. See, when we say class, we just can't say class and leave it there. We got to specify who we're talking about. So we're talking about the white supremacists. That is the powerful class.
So where does President Obama...
The powerless class are all of the non-white people on the planet, even those that have a couple of $1 billion or so.
Like Oprah.
They are powerless because the white supremacists control every dollar and every cent of that black person's money because the white supremacists are the masters of money. I've heard black people say, well, all I need is some money. The average black person standing on the corner that doesn't have $2 or $3 will say that. I would say that because that's the way I would see the world. You know, if I had some money, I'd have to take care of everything. No, it doesn't, because the same people who master me master money, and they master the money that I have, and they will determine what I can spend the money on, how long I can hold it. If I try to move it, that's when I really find out. I can have, Neely Fuller Jr. can have a couple of $1 billion, but you got to figure, who is the master of that money that I have? The same master that I have. Okay, so whomever masters me masters the money that I have. See, money has a master. Money just didn't appear out of nowhere, just fall out of some tree somewhere or something like that, as the old folks used to say. No, the white supremacists master money. They determine the value of money. There are people all over the world who have all kinds, trillions of dollars, all right? And many of them, a substantial number, not a whole lot, are black or non-white. But the white supremacists can push a button on a computer and declare that that money is worthless. And the non-white person will step forward and say, you can't declare my money worthless. I got plenty of money. I worked hard for this money. I mean, I'm a genius at finance. And I mean, in my tabulations, in my computers, and all of my figures tell me that this is my money. And you can't declare my money worthless. And the white supremacist said, I just did. Don't tell me what I can't do, and I just did it. I just told you your money is worthless. As of 12 o'clock last night, your money and all the money that your people in your country have is worthless because I said so. Why? Because I'm your boss. I boss you and your money. Now, you get in my face and start telling me what you're going to do in spite of what I just told you, and we're going to draw the line in the sand, mister, because it all comes down to what? Who can whip who? And I can whip your socks off with money flying all over the place in about 2 seconds. Now, do you catch my drift, boy? And every black person who thinks he's the president of some African country has found this out anytime they put it to a test.
Wow. I mean, this is some heavy-duty stuff.
You better believe it is.
Yeah, because I don't have a good handle on it, I got to tell you. I have to read your books and get a deeper understanding, a fuller understanding of it, because when you're talking about white supremacy, the white supremacists, I asked someone, I said, where do black people control and dominate white people in all activity? And the response I get is that, yeah, they say some African countries. Many people believe that. And you say that's not true because just the push of a button will let them know that's not true. Do I have it right?
Takes. Push that button on a computer, and all of a sudden the person who is there with his suit and tie on in Mali or someplace, or in the Ivory Coast, will look up at that computer board saying stock market exchange or whatever, and it's gone crazy. All of a sudden he's found out that everything that he has is worthless. All the stocks that he has in this, that, and the other, and all of that he thought he had in a Swiss bank is gone. Why? The white supremacist said, hey, if I master you, I master everything that you got, including your wife and family. You don't have a wife. You're black walking around on this planet, and you talking about my woman? Are you crazy? You don't have a woman, boy. You don't have anything.
Okay,
you get everything from me. You could not feed those little children that you got without my permission. You got to understand what it means when people just use 2 words, white supremacy. You don't even understand what that means, but you will. if you
I
put
know.
it to
A
test.
lot of people don't understand. It's controversial stuff. But let me ask you, Mr. Fuller, where can people purchase your book, The Independent Compensatory Code System Concept? Where can they purchase it? You
can go punch in producejustice.com. Website, producejustice.com.
Producejustice.com. Okay, we only have 30 seconds left. Mr. Fuller, I'm going to have you back on. I'm going to read your books, and then I'm going to have you back on so I can discuss it more in depth.
Yes, ma'am, because I just don't want to talk about the problem and just have black people feel that they're just being beat up on. I want to talk about the solutions.
So next time when I have you on, which will be soon, we'll talk about solutions.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. I'll be in touch with you. Thank you very much for being a guest on my show. I appreciate it. Bye. See you next week. We're going to have Neely Fuller on at another time to talk about solutions. Thank you very much.